Welcome to Principles to Live By, a 7-week series exploring the principle of creation. I'm so happy that you could join us, and this session is an overview of the first week. An incredible team has put this together, and we'd like to introduce ourselves to you. So, my name is Heather Talheimer, and as you can see, I live in a log cabin in the woods and wilds of New Hampshire. And I got involved in this project because I'm just really curious about how ideas and words can change people's lives for the better. And so I hope that you get a lot out of this series, and I would like to introduce my teammates, Dr. Frank Kaufman.
Hi, I'm Frank Kaufman. I live in New York City. I'm very excited to be involved with this project. I love the divine principle. I think it has a lot to offer people from every faith. I've worked in the religious world internationally for many, many years. And I've always felt at home with my brothers and sisters of every faith tradition. And I look forward to being with all of you in the weeks to come. Thank you.
And Sun Hyung, would you like to share with us next?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sun Hyun Miller. I'm a computer programmer. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. And I'm here because I love peace, and I love to learn, and I love to ask questions.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, hi, my name is Joe Young. I'm a pastor in South Florida, Family Church of South Florida. And our community is a small little community near Fort Lauderdale. And we teach a lot of values and lessons out of the Bible, but also the divine principle as well. So, so happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Dr. Wayne Miller.
Hi, I'm Wayne Miller. I've been a professor of religion, philosophy, and ethics for many years, as well as a member of the Unification community. And like my fellow compatriots here, I love the divine principle. I love the insights it's provided for my life, and I'm very happy to be here. And we hope we can all share this with you that may be of something that may be of value to your lives as well.
Thank you. And Catherine Ono.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine from Boston. I'm also a pastor of the Boston Family Church. And I'm eager to really examine the principle together with people from all over the country and now even all over the world, because I think the principle kind of offers insights that has enabled me to create kind of freshness and newness in both my own thoughts and feelings, and then also in my relationships with people, and most importantly with my relationship with God. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this journey of this series together with all of you.
Thank you. And today, Luc Jean, who's a team member, a high school student, wasn't able to be with us today, but he is also a member of our team. And so without further ado, let's begin our study of the principle of creation. But before we do that, I just want you to reflect a minute and think about questions that you've had in your life, because we want this study, this time together to really be practical and applicable and interesting to you. And just so we have some time to think about the questions that we have in our lives, I'd like to invite up Sun Hyung Miller to share with us about a question that he had or has.
Yeah. So I'm going to reshare the story that I shared at the last session. But we're all here because we want to learn, and we want to ask deep questions. I wanted to share an experience from when I was a kid, and it was the first deep question that I ever asked. So I was 6 years old, and my father, Wayne Miller, who's here with us, he was a professor, still is. He's a professor of philosophy, religion, and ethics. And I loved to go with him, to ride along with him and listen in on his lectures when he would go teach at college. And the other students thought it was really funny and cute that there was this little 6-year-old boy sitting in the class listening attentively to the professor. And this day in particular, my dad was teaching about the existentialist philosophers like Albert Camus, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Simone de Beauvoir, as well as others. And I was really trying to get through to the students that these people really asked questions about what is the meaning of my existence? What is the meaning of my life? You know, why do I do what I do, right? What is the value in it? And for me, 6 years old, I heard this and it really penetrated into my head. And I felt this moment of total dread, because I realized I had this thought, wait, what am I doing with my life? I'm not doing anything of any value. I'm just pursuing entertainment and fun and just playing around. You know, what's the value in that? And I mean, for a 6-year-old, I think that's what you're supposed to do. But in that moment, I felt, you know, completely, complete dread. And so I was thinking about it for like an hour after the lecture. I kept thinking, and I think it was on the ride home or when we got home, I thought back. I was in kindergarten at the time. I thought back, there had been a kid who had joined our class part of the way through the year. He had moved to our town, and nobody knew him, so he was completely alone at recess. And so I sought him out, and we played imaginary baseball together. We had a great time. He had a smile on his face. And so me at 6 years old, when I thought about that, I thought, well, maybe the purpose of my life is to be a friend to people who don't have friends. And so that made me feel, that made calmness wash over me. It made me feel like, okay, my life has a purpose and has value. But ever since that fateful day when I was 6 years old, that question has always stuck with me. What is the purpose of my life? Why does it matter that I existed and not somebody else? And I've always thought about that. And two things I know for sure about that question is that if I want to answer that, one, I have to be honest. I have to try to seek what is true, what is real, not lie to myself about what reality is. And number two, ultimately that question, why does it matter that Sunyon Miller existed, can only be answered by Sunyon Miller. And so I hope that me sharing this story has prepared us to ask deep questions and have deep thoughts. Thank you for listening. Heather, I'll hand it back to you.
Hey, thank you so much. That is such a great story. I love that story. And it really speaks to how we all have questions in our lives, and we can think back even into our childhood and remember big questions that we asked ourselves. And so Principles to Live By is asking those questions and giving us all an opportunity to think about them. So without further ado, I'd like to invite up Wayne Miller to give us an introduction to the principles.
Thank you, Heather. As I said, my name is Wayne Miller. I've been a professor of religion and philosophy and ethics for many, many years. And I have found the principle, the divine principle, to be extremely helpful in my life and in the lives of thousands of others. So we're going to pursue sort of a glimpse into that over the next few weeks. So I'd like to introduce today some of the questions and issues that we will be thinking about and asking. But before I begin, I first want to ask you, how many of you today woke up and said, you know, today I really want to have a miserable day. I hope today is the worst day of my life. I just want to suffer incredibly all day long and just go to bed just in tears and weeping and wailing. Hands, anyone?
No.
No?
No.
All right. I didn't think so. The reason I don't think so is because everyone throughout all of history has wanted one thing, to be happy. Everyone seeks happiness, fulfillment. You know, from the ancient ages of long ago up through the present, and I'm sure into the distant future, people will ask these questions, like, how can I be happy? What can I do? And the sad fact is that despite the fact that we all want to be happy, most people, if you look around, are not very happy. I mean, a lot of people are really miserable in their lives, and they don't know what to do about it. And even some people who have carved out some sort of happiness or stability in their life think, well, yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm pretty good. But even those people realize, most of them, that this world is pretty fragile. If you look at all the things that are happening with the recent pandemic and wars and all sorts of other stuff, we realize that life in this world is pretty fragile. So the question is then, how can we be happy? What is it that leads to happiness? So the simple answer is quite simple, actually. To be happy, we need to be able to fulfill our desires. When you have a desire, something you really want to do, and you're able to fulfill that desire, it leads to happiness. It could be anything from something very simple, like finding the ideal cheeseburger. I remember when I was a kid, a teenager, I found this place that had these amazing cheeseburgers. And I've been looking for that cheeseburger for the last 50 years. Really, it was an amazing cheeseburger. Or it could be something astonishing like Elon Musk wanting to take people to Mars, or anything in between. But when we can fulfill our desires, we find happiness. The problem is, for us human beings, we seem to have conflicting desires. We definitely have desires which are constructive, which are, when we fulfill them, we find happiness, we bring joy to ourselves, we bring joy to people around us, like doctors creating some cure for some disease. It's an amazing goal and desire, and when they fulfill that, they feel tremendous happiness. But we also have what I would call destructive desires, which are desires which really mess us up and cause tremendous suffering and pain, not only for ourselves, but for many other people around us. And unfortunately for us, we don't always know which is which. We seem to be confused about that. So the question is, why is this? The first question is, why is this? I mean, think about it. Dogs and cats, pardon me, dogs and cats don't go to school. Lions and tigers don't go to school. And yet these animals all seem to function quite happily and naturally in their environment without any education or thing. It's just instinctive. They go around their business and they seem to function quite well. But human beings, we can study for 12 years, 15, 20, even 30 years. We get out of college and we still don't know how to live happily. So why is that? Well, different people have different explanations for that. In the Bible and other religions, people talk of an original sin or some fall of man or some catastrophe that happened at the beginning of human history. And while some of you may not be religious or theistic, you may not be involved in the Bible, you have to admit there's something wrong with human beings. We can't, despite, for in America, for example, we live in the richest country in all of human history, and yet we fight all the time. People are fighting and struggling against each other rather than using the incredible resources we have to create, a happy existence for all of us. So here's the thing. We have to admit at least one thing is very true. No matter what your views may be, we are ignorant. We have fallen into ignorance, or we're born in ignorance, but there's something about us which is very ignorant. We have two kinds of ignorance. Let me show you here if I can do this. Can you? I need share screen here. All right, well, we'll get there. We have two kinds of ignorance. First, there's internal ignorance. This is the ignorance of our mind. We have a mind and a body, and our internal ignorance is ignorance, which is the ignorance of where we came from, why we exist. We don't know anything about it. Is there a God? Are we made by God? We have some purpose that we're unaware of. And externally, we have ignorance of the physical world. What are the laws and that govern the existence of anything in the universe? Starting about 400 years ago with Isaac Newton and the Enlightenment, scientists made tremendous progress in discovering the way the world works, like the laws of gravitation and the other laws. And we've had tremendous increases in technology. But actually, over the last 70 years, we've had almost no progress whatsoever in fundamental physics. When you get down to particle physics, subatomic particles. About 70 years ago, people came up with quantum physics, and it's very freaky and weird. And then scientists just, well, we don't know. So we're just not even going to look. We're just going to do math. And so they come up with all sorts of theories about dark matter and string theory and everything. But none of these are provable. None of these have any sort of substance to them that we can actually show. So it's all just in the realm of theory. So if we're going to deal with these questions, we have to be able, for example, this one, why are we here? Is there a God? What are the fundamental questions of the universe? We don't know these things. We need to find out these things. And then the other thing too is, even if we find out those things, even if we struggle to find them, how do we do that? Throughout history, as I said, scientists have studied laws of physics and the world around us. And people in religion have tried to study, and philosophy, the origin or the meaning of life, and the nature of or possibility of God's existence. But still, it's not really clear. It's if you go to a pastor or a religious leader and say, Pastor, I don't understand why, if there's a God, why is there suffering in the world, or why does this happen? And most often the response is, my son, my daughter, do not ask these questions. God is a mystery. We cannot answer these questions. We just have to trust and have faith. Well, come on. We want transparency in government. We want transparency in business. Why not transparency with God? We need to find out, what is God? Who is God? If God made us, why? Why are we here? I'm talking to many religious people, and I say, why did God create the physical world? You believe in a spiritual world. Okay, why is there a physical world? Oh, well, the physical world is unimportant. It's a testing ground. And if we pass the test, we go to heaven. And if we fail the test, we go to hell forever. Okay, first of all, I'm a father. I have 4 kids. The idea that I would give some sort of weird test to my children, and then, depending on whether they pass or not, I collect them into my bosom for eternity, or condemn them to eternal suffering, that doesn't sound like a loving father to me. That sounds like some sort of weirdo, crazy guy, And also, my son, my oldest son, is a theoretical physicist. My whole family is very much involved in physics and math and biology. The world around us is so vast and complex. It's unimaginable how amazing it is. And the idea that God would, if there's a God who would just make this as some sort of whim to test us, it makes no sense. So there has to be some other answer. Throughout history, science and religion seem to have been in conflict with each other. Oh, we can't use science. We just have to have faith. No, there has to come a time. Even Jesus said in the Bible, I've said these things to you in parables, but I will tell you clearly in the future. I will tell you clearly what's going on. We need that. We need that clarity and transparency. We need to know what is God. If there's a God, what happened? And we need to realize that these things have to be rational. We can't just keep saying, oh, scientists are weird. No, scientists want to know what's what. We should all want to know that. So the other thing we need to know, there are 3 basic questions that we need to answer if we're going to pursue these things to their fulfillment. One is there a God? How did we get here? Why am I here? Is there purpose? Is there some ideal purpose for my life? If there is, we should know about that, because otherwise, we're like that girl, in the, the girl, the Little Mermaid, who found garbage at the bottom of the ocean, was using it to comb her hair and brush her teeth. Yeah, you can do that, but it doesn't work, because that's not what it was made for. And if we don't know what we're made for, then how can we fulfill our purpose? We need to think about that and see if we can find some answers to that or some insights on that. Secondly, if there is a God, is God good? And if it's good, why is the world so messed up? This is a fundamental question people have had through all of human history, and no one has been able to answer that question. Nobody is able to present on that question. We need to find the answer to this question, or at least insights on this question. Why is the world messed up? Why are we messed up? Why, when we're trying to be a good person, we fight with our brothers and sisters. We fight with our husband or wife. We do stupid things. And we know, even when we're doing them, we know they're stupid. And yet, sometimes we just can't help being stupid. Why is this? Why are we so stupid? So, and thirdly then, if there is a God, and if God is good, then how do we fix this situation? Is there some way to actually heal human beings? Is there some way to actually heal the world and bring about a better world, an ideal world? When I was a young man, there was a song, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. People were saying, this is the age when stuff is going to happen. We're finally going to come back to the garden. You know, back, I'm showing my age now, but back at Woodstock, going back to the garden. You know, this was the theme of Woodstock, getting back to the garden. So if there is a God, and if God is good, then how do we do this? How do we get back to the garden? How do we get back to some ideal that we were created to achieve? Now, as I said, scientists and religious people have sought this throughout human history, but so far the questions, there have been very few insights or answers to these questions. However, 80 years ago in Korea, there was a young man named Sun Myung Moon. Some people today call him Reverend Moon or Father Moon. He wasn't always a reverend. He was a young man with a passionate desire to know, why is the world full of suffering? His own homeland of Korea was occupied by the Japanese at that time, and they were suffering horribly. They were being imprisoned, tortured, and even killed just for speaking Korean, which was their native language. And it was a terrible, terrible time. And he prayed and cried, and he saw through many years of meditation and prayer and observing human beings, what is wrong? Why are human beings so incredibly frustrated and unable to achieve happiness? And through many years of struggle and suffering, he arrived at amazing insights into the nature of reality, the nature of God, and the nature of our relationship to each other. And those insights that he achieved are contained in a book called The Divine Principle. Many of them are, or Exposition of the Divine Principle. And it's the principle that is taught by the Unification Movement. And these principles are really amazing because they've helped many of us understand much more clearly our lives and our relationship to God. Who's God? What is God? And what is our purpose in this world? How can we live a happy life? So in the next few weeks, we're going to have several presentations on the principle of creation, which is the first part of the divine principle. And this talks very, very clearly about God. Who is God? What is God? Is there a God? And if there is a God, what is the nature of God? And what does that mean for us? So all of these things, the question is, we're not just about theology here. We're talking about practical applications also. What do these ideas, if we can find some questions or some answers or some insights, what will those insights mean for us? So for the next several weeks, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to ask you to be patient. I don't know, some of you may not be very religious, but we're going to ask you to be patient because look, either there's a God or there's no God. If there's no God and we're just like, okay, there were a bunch of hydrogen atoms and poof, suddenly there's human beings. Well, then I guess there's no point in anything. But if there's some purpose or some guiding rationality behind the universe, we need to know more about it if we can. So we're going to start with the assumption that God exists, and from there we're going to try to lay out a view of the divine, which may be very helpful to all of us. So try to put your mind into a very receptive frame of like, okay, I'm going to listen here, I'm going to see what they have to offer, because if we have an open mind and a listening heart, I hope we can all share things that will enlighten us all, enable us all to have a better relationship to each other and, if possible, to God. So we thank you very, very much for all your time here. And I'm going to turn it back over to Heather. And I hope you have a very pleasant time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for that introduction to Principles to Live By. Really excited for our upcoming series. And just ask you to think, as you kind of move forward into the weekend a little bit about like what struck you from that presentation? What stood out to you? What idea intrigues you? And also we want to ask you like, what is the big question in life that you have? Sun Hyung shared with us, but what's your big question? And then we want to invite you back on Monday to join us in our second presentation of Principles to Live By. We're really looking forward to meeting you then, Monday at 8 p.m. So thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend.